Holly,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. We have a perfect setup.
I know, it's pretty neat. We're in Flagstaff, Arizona at the F-Bomb Factory. They're the sponsors of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's pretty cool because I met you here when they had the open house for their new factory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way Flagstaff seems to go. Like, everyone meets each other in the most synchronistic ways, and then things develop out of it that are just, it seems like it would never happen anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's like, I guess what happens in like smaller towns or villages.
Right,
There's
for
some
sure.
sort of like probable chance of like really like bumping into each other.
Yeah.
And I like came in from California with my buddy Chris Albert, the Warrior Soul,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was pretty neat because he had told me about F-Bomb and I actually tried their product, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I heard about Ross and Kara, and then he's like, hey, you want to come? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this, and then I met you. You were like serving behind the bar. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know, it was a good time, and I feel like I was definitely excited to come here. Like, I knew that them asking me to bartend for the event was really just a networking situation, so it worked out really well for me.
Yeah, for us,
Yeah.
like it was really cool. It's so neat because like Ross and Kara are such sweet people, and
They're wonderful.
and how did you meet them?
I met them serving them at a bar and like a cocktail bar and coffee shop that I worked at for a couple years. So they would come in regularly and order heavy cream lattes, and I always remembered, I remember people's order pretty easily, but I always was like heavy cream
Latte, yeah.
I mean,
High
because that's
fat.
it's a lot of fat, and so you'd be surprised though how many people order those. Anyway, they were always just so sweet, and then their little Ruby girl.
Oh yeah, Ruby's
just
a sweetheart.
Precious too,
Yeah.
and so pretty quickly I was giving them all hugs every time they came in, and then they were like, "Hey, we saw you on Instagram. You do some cool stuff. Do you want to maybe like trade? Where you do some posts for us, and we'll give you some free nut butters." And I was like, yes, why wouldn't I want that? And so yeah, we did that, and then they actually ended up supporting me in an even bigger way by giving me all my gift bags for my yoga and health retreat last year. So everyone got a little F-Bomb like canvas tote and like some information on why fat is fuel and some free nut butters and stickers, so it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so when you met them at this cafe, like did you know that they had this company?
Not initially, because they were just getting it started. It was like the very beginning of everything. And then, we continued talking about like, hey, what's going on with your business? Because we were both starting new businesses. Mine much smaller,
Right.
Especially now that they have grown so much.
Mm-hmm.
But so it pretty much we just kept keeping in touch, and like I said, they were kind of trading me for marketing and sponsoring me in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that relationship started, we just talked quite a bit because I saw them a few times a week, and they let me know about their big explosion with their business, and I'm just obviously so stoked for them.
Mm-hmm.
But also gives me hope for other small businesses like mine, that even if you want to expand big, you don't have to think like that can only happen in a city.
So they found out through conversation that you're involved with like wellness and yoga.
Yeah.
And you have like Instagram, like name or so, and then they somehow looked it up and saw that you had done these retreats.
Yeah, well, and I'm kind of old school in that I still really enjoy giving people business cards. Maybe not a lot of people do that anymore, but I'm really big on like, here, let me give you my card. And if other people have cards, I hold on to them and I use them. I get a hold of people from their business card a lot. So they used mine, I think, to look me up on there. Okay. And and that was kind of how it all transpired into us saying, wait, we have a lot more in common than we realized.
Yeah, they're really cool that way because when I came here and I was talking to them, sharing my story, they were like, "Oh my God, you gotta meet Holly," you know. And then you and I talked, and it was just like instant, you know. It was
Yeah.
like immediate connection and a lot of the similar experiences.
Yeah.
And I was just like taken back a lot by like even your story of like growing up with your father and
Mm-hmm.
him being like an extreme athlete. Like, was it hang gliding or
Paragliding.
paragliding? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like growing up and being around a father that was like really like living life to the fullest?
Yeah, it was amazing, obviously. I mean, I think it is a huge part of why I am who I am now. It's interesting because as I get older, I definitely have a lot more boundaries with extreme sports and being extreme in general. Like through my teen years, I definitely went through that invincible phase, and I would try anything, anytime, didn't care. And now, when I think about, for instance, last year, almost exactly a year ago, I went skydiving for my birthday. You would have thought by now I would have skydived at least once, but I hadn't because I had this, I developed like a bit of a fear about it. Once I did it, I didn't feel fearful at all anymore. But I guess my point is that even though I grew up with him, I still changed over time, like into my own self. I wasn't always just so like, get out of my way, there's nothing that can scare me. That said, though, yeah, it was really cool because I didn't grow up a normal kid at all. And that made me a much better person because it made me stronger in a lot of ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, but I definitely stood out from other people my whole life.
Yeah.
I was
What do you
always
mean like by not normal?
Well, I guess, like, I was a huge tomboy, like, refused to wear girl clothes till I was probably 12 or 13. Just was kind of afraid of being a girl. I just didn't want any part of that. Of course I had little crushes on boys here and there, but I was always like a bro. And that was like who I was. And I would beat all the boys in pull-up contests and races. Like, I played football with them. And then, you know, I just, I always remember just being that kid too that could converse with adults.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd be hanging out with the parents in the kitchen talking. My friends are like, that is so weird. Why are you doing that? And I always was that way. I just was separate from my age group more than anything. And then in high school, people weren't very nice, which is pretty common. Most people have that story, I think. But for me, the reason was, I remember my best friend saying to me one time, I was crying. I was like, why is everyone so mean to me? And why are you so nice to me? Like, you're one of the most popular girls in school, and everyone thinks I'm such a weirdo. And she was like, yeah, you're my weirdo, though. She goes, let me tell you something. Someone told me that they thought you were a freak because you were too polite. Whoever says that has serious problems. What kind of issue is that to bring up with someone? So don't care about what they say. But yeah, that's how it was a lot of my life, where people thought that I was being maybe ingenuine because I shook hands with people upon meeting them or said please and thank you and was easy to converse with. And they, unfortunately, I think were brought up to just not be that way.
Well, you had like manners, and did your parents have like a huge influence on that? Or
yeah.
Like, okay,
big time. I mean, they weren't like super strict people, like very proper, but they were definitely big on respect. And yeah, and my dad, for instance, so one of the things that was really unique growing up with him was that we didn't get to come inside and play video games or watch TV until the sun went down. We had to be outside until the sun went down. And I loved that because I loved being outside. But also, instead of like, us going, let's say, to the movies on a regular basis, when my friends would come over, my dad would take us out in the woods and teach us how to build, structures out of pine needles and how to make a fire with only one match, and we'd have to ride miles on our bikes, then run up some crazy crater, like go, explore pueblos that obviously hadn't been touched, and then he'd be like, okay, you have 20 minutes to start a fire and build a shelter. What are you gonna do? And so I'd be like 8 years old trying to do all this stuff, and I loved it, but it instilled this major sense of responsibility and self-reliance in me.
Right, so he obviously had that big impact on you, of being like how humans have been for many years before like modernization.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool that you had that kind of childhood upbringing.
Yeah, and I do have to too mention my mom's part, because she has a huge influence on me too. She is like this amazing handy woman. She can do carpentry, she can do a little bit of welding, she's like can tile. I mean, she's an incredible decorator, but she's just like a badass, and she walks around with her heels on and her booty shorts and her tool belt and kicks ass all day long. Wow. And everyone is like, man,
that's pretty hot.
Yeah, I know. In high school, all the boys were like, is your mom home? I'm like, no, it'll be fun, we'll party, come over. They're like, oh, we'll just come back when Dad's home. Like, they wanted to hang out with her.
Wow.
Which I don't blame them. Yeah, so she's super cool, and also she's just like an incredible businesswoman, very savvy in pretty much everything she does. So I got to learn a lot from her too on how to embrace not being maybe the normal chick.
Right.
But like embracing both the masculine and feminine side.
Yeah, there's a lot of balance there, and also like you were given an opportunity just to be yourself.
Yeah.
Like without like having to differentiate between like masculine or feminine. Like you're Holly.
Right.
And like you had these influences of your parents, which is like awesome. And you had the ability to have like conversations with them. That's my take, is that you actually had like conversations with your parents, and that enabled you to like talk to adults. And that was the first thing that struck me when we met. It was like how deep we can go in like many aspects of life, where it wasn't just superficial about the material things, which are nice, but it's like what is life really about? And so hearing about like your father's death, and how precious life is in that sense too. And I was just like, my goodness, like we need to like stay in touch.
Yeah, no, I felt that too. That's why I called you again. It was like, hey, I think we really need to actually stay in touch, instead of just saying like, yeah, later, and then there's no later.
Yeah, I mean that's what's really crazy. A lot of these social gatherings where like people like connect, and then you don't hear from them like right after that, and it's like I heard the term, it's called cruise ship like romance or something. It's like people like really connect during the time that they hang out, but then because they're like in a distance away, they just kind of forget about each other. And it was just like they only had that moment, but then afterwards it was like you never hear from each other again.
Yeah, I like that terminology to describe it though.
Yeah, like parties are weird that way, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. Every situation's different, but like I knew that you were somebody that I wanted to like hang out with.
Yeah.
And like,
Thanks.
really like, like it was like, wow, you're weird too, cool.
Yeah.
Like, could you come on my show, Hangry and Horny,
Yes, I can, and I will be just as weird.
Yeah, that was cool. It was funny. So you have like done a retreat. Well, let's get into like the whole like yoga thing. Like, how did you get into that?
So I started doing yoga when I was about 10 with my dad. I would wake up with him I might be a little off, but between 5 and 5:30 every day.
That's hella early.
Yeah, and we would do, I remember yoga with Wailana, and she was a Hawaiian our Asian Hawaiian woman that would do yoga on the cliffside in Hawaii, and she would always wear a flower crown.
Okay, we're gonna get your age here. Was it VHS or DVD?
It was actually Channel 8.
Channel 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
okay, yeah.
But I am about to be 26, so I did live in the VHS age.
Okay.
For most of my childhood. DVDs we didn't really start watching till I was probably in middle school, you know.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you remember those days of VHS. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
And I still have a bunch of them, actually. I don't know why, because I don't know what I'll do with them, but they're in storage. Yeah, so we would watch Wailana on Channel 8 and do yoga, and I was, like I said, maybe not the most normal kid. Like, when I remember we'd wake up and do our yoga in the living room, and then I would drink tea and read a book like in the windowsill. And I just found that so like peaceful, and it was like I felt like an adult, and I wish being an adult was just that easy. But you know, as a kid to be living that out, that was like so dear to me, that morning routine of like I would be up for hours before school and just got to kind of have my time, and I was a huge reader and everything. So
what time would you go to bed at night?
Probably pretty early, like 8:30 or 9. I honestly still can sleep 8 to 10 hours a night easily and feel great. Like I need that amount of sleep, and I've always been that way.
Yeah, so, same here. I mean, I'm like surprised how people can do like 5 or less.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, wow. And apparently there's a gene for people, but it's like, it's such an outlier, you know? Like,
right.
Most people really do need like 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
And I love the research. It was like, you know, like the true brainwashing, where it's like you have a washing machine in your brain where the neurons like retract and like the lymphatic comes in and it like cleans out all the gunk in the brain when you're sleeping. And people that don't get enough sleep, they build up that plaque.
Wow.
And so over time, that's where some of these like neurodegenerative issues come into play. But
that's so interesting.
That's a true brainwashing. Yeah, it's really cool.
I wish I would have known that a few weeks ago. I just wrote a paper on neurodegenerative diseases, and I was trying to find like the more far out reasons why maybe it happens to people, and a lot of it was really dull science, like that took, you know, a long time to read through. So I was trying to kind of break away from that, because gene coding isn't something that writing a paper on people will be into. Like they're gonna read one paragraph and be
like us sometimes.
Even my teacher was like, okay, but the audience is lay people or like common people. No one's gonna understand what you're talking about, so just back up a little. I was like, sorry, okay, it just gets really confusing. But I should have talked about that, because that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's so much like neat science coming out. Like they're still discovering like parts of the human body that they didn't even know existed.
Right.
Like there's this new layer that's in between like the connective tissue and the muscle.
And they're finding out like functions for organs and stuff that they never knew were a function before. Yeah,
exactly. And then there's like this sort of debate that's happening between whether there's actually neurogenesis, like, you know, developing new brain cells, or we just have the supply that we're born with, you know. And so they're just going back and forth about like neuroplasticity as well, and no one can like say definitively, you know.
Well, and maybe I'm gonna go out there for a second. Maybe it can't really be said definitively, because not only are we all different genetically, but different species wise. You know what I mean? Like we're not all the same breed of human. So
yeah, I mean, I had sort of that awareness when I did my 23andMe, and they said that I was like part Neanderthal.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so
my mom just did that, and she got that back too.
Yeah, so like apparently like there's a bunch, it just varies between like less than 1%, like up to like maybe at most like I'm just guessing here because I'm trying to remember where my friend he had like a high amount of like the outlier, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe like 90 percentile or something. But
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy because you know I truly believe that like that we have um, sort of subhuman species, you know, like
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily agree with the whole like monkey theory or something where it's like we came from like primates. I think we're just another um, branch of a primate. Like,
Mhm.
but because I was like, well, if that's the case, then there would have been like a half chimpanzee human
Right.
hybrid from a freak, like you
Right.
know, some freaky person, you know, like crossbreeded
Right.
with,
I
you know,
know.
like so. Yeah,
It
it was
does
just like,
seem.
well, that would have been the case. So we don't see that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
No, yeah, it all seems a little, and I know maybe someone's gonna school us on this and be like, okay, that is like not where they were going with that. Like, you guys are totally wrong. Whatever. My belief, and maybe I think that I'm not set on anything, but a large part of my belief is that maybe we didn't come from apes necessarily, maybe somewhat, but that, there were species from not just this planet that were interbreeding, and we are the result of that, and that some people are more human than others, you know?
right,
Because to me, I'm like, there's no way humans only, or like beings only started being here when they did. Like, oh, right, right a few thousand years before Jesus was here or whatever. And they say, like, oh, humans were here 150,000 years ago, but now they're finding new evidence that beings, like sentient beings, were here 350,000 years ago and more. And it's like, yeah, of course, we're ignorant, I mean, also maybe even arrogant to think that we're the only things, that
yeah.
have
I
been
love where this
here.
is
Like,
going. Like, this
yeah.
is my like conversation because
Yeah.
I obviously can't like confirm anything, you
Right.
know. And the thing is like there's fossil records, and it's like the earth is so old, you know,
Yeah.
and like the whole religion thing is also like a whole intersect here, and like the Bible and all that stuff, and it's just it's just funny to me. It's like they do have like fossil records of other like human like beings on the planet, and um, it gets into conspiracy and theories about like you know possible like giant humans as well, and
Whoa.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, and but there's never been like a complete like fossil um, excavation. Like they've never found a complete like human like fossil. It's always been like bits, so they can like
Mm-hmm.
date it.
Right.
But then you know that's the oldest one that they found. That's a certain date, but they just can't find anything older than that yet. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so they can carbon date it, and the theory is like, okay, so where did like life come from? Like it came out of like bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, um, certain bacteria can live in space in like the most extreme environments. So there's like I think it's called a tardigrade type of
Mm-hmm.
bacteria, and it looks like a little like anteater with like 8 legs, and
Yeah.
and like has these
They're
like
kind of cute
they're
and
kind of cute, like
creepy.
puppy
Yeah.
alien. So it's like okay, so then maybe they landed in the ocean. They can live in like cold. They can live in heat. But like how this thing like kind of evolved into like other life forms that we know of. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it just doesn't equate. So that's what I love about this show. We're gonna be able to have like scientists on
Yeah.
that we can like sort of talk about this. And I was like, how do they truly know? Like, how do people truly know about like history?
Right. Well, and it's changing all the time.
Hmm.
So we have those insights, like you said, like but then how many times do you hear on the radio or read in the news or whatever that someone publishes a new book that says, whoa, wait, everything we thought was one way is now we've just found it's totally wrong. And it's like, yeah, even the best brains in the world can get things wrong because the evidence is just unclear.
Yeah, it's the what I heard now science defined as like the current understanding as we know it now,
Right.
and like science is constantly like evolving because they're figuring out new things that are basically like either confirming what they knew before or basically like rewriting what they knew. So
Yeah.
this concept of like mirror neurons where like if I watch you perform like a yoga move, supposedly there's these neurons in our brain that like picks that up and enables me to be able to do it as well just
Yeah.
from watching you. And but then now they're debunking that. They're like, yeah, it's not that simple. There's a whole network, and I forget what the abbreviation was, but they're like, they're not sure yet, right? So there's no anything definitive. And the crazy thing is, there's people out there that are saying it is this, yet there's other neuroscientists on the opposite side saying no, it's not. So they
Yeah.
can't even like come to a consensus.
Yeah, I know it's frustrating to watch and difficult, but I have a very minor science background. Like I have a bachelor's degree in botany. However, I have to say that it's not necessarily in use in my life anymore. Like a bachelor's degree is essentially an extension of high school.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, but it is in a lot
Yeah,
of ways.
yeah, it's business.
But for
College
me, I always felt like science was more or less just the practice of asking questions and leaving open and like being open to new answers. You know? Because without you being able to ask those questions constantly, like new questions of instead of just accepting like, oh, okay, yeah, it must be this. You have to say, but how could it be that? Why would it only take that one pathway? Or, you know, you have to be open to all these possibilities and be open to the fact that you're probably wrong. In whatever your theory is, you're probably going to be wrong multiple times before you're right.
Yeah, it's fascinating because of the variabilities of being like human, like interfacing with the environment, the whole epigenetic thing that now is coming into play, that our environment has a role as like switching the signals on and off of our cells. So we're not like necessarily just stuck with like a death sentence of genetics. Like there's some rare forms, but most of us can like be influenced by like how we put ourselves in our environment. And it's so cool, like back to your mom and dad, like they had you in these environments that enabled you to like nurture like your sort of creativity and like your likes, you know, and then like gave you the chance to like ask questions and communicate and like experiment. And you know, that's such a crucial environment that's not even in school, like talking about like college being an extension of high school. I was like, why am I relearning the stuff that we learned in high school? It's like, well, they're making money, and there's certain things that you do need to go to school to learn a trade if you're going to be like a surgeon or a mechanic or but a lot of it is like information that may not be relevant or like updated.
Yeah. Well, and that's where it's like a lot of it you could argue is college is more than getting an education through books or through like what we consider education. It's an education on how to become an adult and how to live life, because so many things people do in college, if you're actually out as an adult, they're not acceptable. I mean, it's like once you're out of college, those things that most of us do, you know, going out and partying every single weekend or during the week even, or taking a bunch of drugs, like whatever is going down, the second you're out of college, it's like, okay, grow up. At least like, and then we all have those friends that don't, and that's fine. But I think like, yeah, it's almost a time to just experience being off on your own and getting like, however, I wish that instead of America being so set on that life experience happening through mostly partying and eating shitty food in college, that our parents would just give us money to go travel like Europeans do, you know?
Yeah, it's
like
huge.
That's a way better life experience.
Yeah, the education that I've gotten from traveling, and I continue to travel, you know, it's just amazing because like these things that they don't teach in school is getting worse now because of like the smartphone and technology, the internet. It's like it's cool that we can get information, but at the same time, a lot of people are like locking themselves in wherever they are, whereas they're not actually like going out and
Right.
applying the information and creating like knowledge into like wisdom,
Yeah.
you know, and having like the, because they sound great. It's whatever they're saying sounds like an expert, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, like they can't even like perform what they know, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel that a lot. And I feel like that was my experience with schooling and stuff too the whole time. I was like, I just want to be exploring the world, but I also got blessed and I wasn't blessed, I worked really hard and was also blessed to go live abroad during my schooling. So I got to do both.
Yeah,
which
it's
was really nice.
For me, what I'm understanding is like there's upsides and downsides to like pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So like school is awesome, you know, if there's certain like subjects that you're really into, and that's what the great thing about at least the high school I went to and the college I went to is that I could pick the courses I wanted to learn, but then there were certain like requirements that, you know, I was like, what's the point of this? Like they should teach us like how to like pay taxes, like how to like manage your income, like how to do survival skills, right? How to like engage with people socially. One of the best classes I ever took was like public speaking.
Yeah.
Like I was so like afraid of that, being like I dug myself and people, you know, I was just naturally like shy, and there's a term like introvert, right?
Yeah.
But I just found that if I was like playing sports, I was actually an extrovert. If I was talking to someone that was also weird, then I was also extroverted. So it wasn't a matter of like being like shy. It was just the environment again. It was like it was the context, because like I would have these questions that no one was talking about, because I think maybe they got caught up in school, they got caught up in like trying to make a living and like in this world, that they just did not ask like the deeper questions, or like why we're here, where do we come from, you know?
And then when they heard them, they were like, why are you thinking about that?
Yeah, why are you asking that? Like just work, just you know. And yeah, it's just really neat to meet like someone else, because a lot of people said when I was younger, like, you're such an old soul. So a lot of times I would just hang out by myself because people couldn't relate to me, I couldn't relate to them. I try to relate to them, like I try to hang out with them, and that's where the peer pressure came in. I did party, I did do some of these things, but in the end I was just like, I didn't really like that, you know. And like the older I get, I'm not really interested in doing those things so much. I'm more interested in like exploring, go out, like if I read something, like experimenting with it, because again, we're also individual, and like there's all these diets, and you know, it's just like, okay, well, there's the information, like apply it in your life, see what works, see what doesn't, you know, and then you can like share to people like what that experiences, but but they have to now like see if that's relevant, or they want to like apply that in their own life.
Yeah. I feel like that's definitely what you have to weigh when you're thinking about what's important to you. And even just today, I was struggling with kind of that same thing, because I'm supposed to go tomorrow to this convention and like set up a little booth where I do like little yoga sessions for people, which is awesome. I love it. However, I went last year, and I'm really stoked that I was invited to go. It's like my doctor, my like family doctor, who invited me because he's a friend of mine. And anyway, I went alone and didn't know anyone, and all these like, it's a river runner convention for the Grand Canyon. And so all these people are kind of like very cliquey and like who are you and why are you standing here with yoga mats? And so I got a lot of people literally laughing at me. And they were like trying to joke with me, but were like, "Yo, why are you here?" kind of thing. And I was there all day by myself, just like doo-doo-doo, you know, feeling super awkward. I was gonna bring a friend with me tomorrow, and she bailed. And now I'm like dreading going again because I'm just remembering how much awkwardness there was with me not relating. They're all talking river guide stuff, and I'm like, yeah, no, I love the water and the way that things happen, and like, I don't know, like the way you row and stuff, cool, right? And like, I'm trying to get involved, but it's, I guess it's just one of those same things where it's like, I'm such an extroverted, happy, like, go-lucky person, but in the right setting, I am very shy and very, like,
self-conscious.
Yeah. And it'll be great. Like, there were a few people who were stoked to have my services and learn some stretches and all that. But yeah, it's interesting how much someone can change in the right setting where you're like, man, I just don't know who I am right now.
Yeah, it's definitely the human experience, right? Like, I've been in different circles or bubbles where it is cliquey, and it's interesting, like if you're an elite crowd, like whether it's athletics, extreme athletes, or even like monetary, like elite, you know,
right.
And there's just a certain like air about these individuals that it's like we're human. Like if we come from that like level playing field, like we can totally relate about a lot of things in life, you know.
Yeah.
But because like I'm not in that level of expertise, like I guess I sound like a child to them.
Yeah, and you find yourself feeling like a child inside
Because of the way that they
everyone, it's like you're a big doe-eyed kid, like, please accept me, or like, I hope that what I'm saying isn't stupid, and then you leave and you're like, wait, I'm not that person, what?
Yeah, maybe because again, like they had like made fun of you or they teased you, instead of saying like, hey, this is like a white belt, like this is someone that's just like learning, and like gives them a chance to like maybe like help you learn something, like they can get down to your level, right? And so again, like I'm sure a lot of kids feel that way, right? Like when their parents like talk down to them, or they're like out of school and like the teacher talks down to them, and it's like okay, yeah, you've lived like life, you're an adult, but like let's like talk to each other on the same level. Like at least for me, it's always gone down to the kid's level, like eye to eye, or an animal. So they're sensitive, they pick up this stuff, right? So I remember like back to like whether or not we're from here.
Oh yeah, let's go back to that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like I was working on horses with like my microcurrent device, a machine, right? And any like creature is gonna be a little bit skittish when it sees some like weird box with like electrodes, and it makes some weird sounds. But the thing is, like, how do you make like any sort of being like comfortable like with your presence, right? And long story short, I just remember working on this particular horse, and actually I was sort of the person that, I don't know what the terminology is for like the equestrian like equine world, where like you're just there to, like, you're a handler. So there are people that were actually working on the horse, and they were doing the training, and I was like there as like a handler. So like my mentor was like, if you want to work on these like thousands of pound beings, like you gotta learn how to like have the proper like presence around them. And so I would just sit there and like hold, you know, the headgear. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I sound like a complete like novice here, but yeah.
See, the don't.
Yeah, right. It's like inside. Yeah. And I just remember looking into the eyes of the horse, and the horse looking back at me, and it was like telepathic.
Yeah.
It said to me like Mr. Ed without talking.
Yeah.
Like it like transmitted to me, and um, it said we're not from here. Like the horse, because if you look at a horse, you're like, that is a weird looking creature. Right? It doesn't look like anything else on the
Yeah.
planet. Like that narrow head,
Yeah.
like the body, right? Like, so I just got this download. It's like they're not from here, and then
That's
the
so cool.
the moment I had that thought, another thought came in and said, "Neither are us, like humans.
Yeah.
Neither are you from here." And I was like, "Holy shit!" Right? And
That's
that
cool.
sounds like complete bullshit,
No,
like
not
woo-woo,
to
like,
me.
and I know to you,
No.
but like anybody that's listening, or
Right.
if I tell this story to like one of those elite circles or something, right? Like they'll just be like, "What the fuck?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, like I
"Hey,
can't
man,
prove it,
yeah, that
I
was my
can't confirm
experience."
it, but it was something that actually happened. It was like the same thing that happened when I had like an outer body experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a legit experience that I had, but I can't prove that, right? And there's a lot of things, like including one of the things that we got into was like flow, like flow state,
Yes.
and you talking about when you give a presentation, like it just comes through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is like, I feel really excited that that happens for me, because like it's okay. So this is so funny. How you were saying your public speaking class like changed your life kind of, because you were like, hey, I can do this, you know. My public speaking class in college, I was like, oh, I got this. I'm a great public speaker. Like, I've already been in graduate seminars giving speeches, you know, for an hour. Like, and I had, like, as like a sophomore in college, I was going above and beyond in that way. And so I thought I'd breeze through it. My teacher was like 2 years older than me, which was fine. I would respect that. But I gave this like great speech, and she goes, she gave me a D. And I was like, I don't understand what is going on. And she goes, well, your paper didn't really match the like guidelines. And I was like, these guidelines are completely standardized. Like, you're telling me that in a public speaking class I'm supposed to have a pre-structured speech based on some book that was written 10 years ago? Like, am I not supposed to have my own voice? She was like, no, you're not really. That's not the point of the assignment. So I dropped the class. Because I was like, that's not the point of this.
Yeah, you rebel.
Yeah, I was
That's
like,
awesome.
no, man, that's not why I took this class. But I guess my point to that is that I've always been like a very
Just freestyle.
right.
Yeah.
I'm a freestyler,
Yeah.
and like I feel even a little inadequate like saying that, because my brother is really like the master of freestyling. He's an epic lyricist.
Really,
Epic.
like spoken word, rapper.
Right. He's
poet.
yeah. And he's actually like producing some good music right now, really good music. But he has, whenever I hear him speak, I'm like, whoa.
So yeah, like I want to hear, like even have a conversation with him, because that's another example of flow state where,
right.
like supposedly this part of our brain, the executive function, prefrontal cortex, like shuts down and like it just streams out, like just full stream of consciousness.
Yeah, well, and I think getting into that flow state and just kind of trusting that. I mean, there's a difference between a bullshitter and a flow stater, because someone who's like in that flow state is going to really, let it all just come out and like let the truth be known and not be worried about what's said.
They're not editing. Right.
And then there's the bullshitters who are just really good at like talking out their ass, essentially, where like they have no idea what they're saying, but they know that they can charm people into thinking they do. So I think like the difference there is just like the genuine nature of trusting your inner knowing and not trusting your inner knowing at all, but hoping that whatever comes out sounds okay enough to be believed.
Yeah,
you know?
I think like, so the speech teacher or speech class that you have, like your teacher, I think that like, you know, I was never in the structure at like most of my life, and so
Right.
like I think that's what they're trying to like help people like sort of condense ideas, help it like become a little more digestible as you like express them versus
Right.
just like just being everywhere, and like you take people on this ride, and it's just a different style, right? Because like politicians have that sort of structure, and
Yeah.
they're like they sort of like rehearse everything, and it sounds so polished. It sounds,
It
and but
does.
to us it sounds like bullshit because it's like, wait a minute, that's not really you. That's
Yeah.
just something that's rehearsed
Well,
because
most of them didn't even write their own speeches.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So it's like this is a marketing thing. It's like what will get the most votes? What's gonna get the
Yeah.
most like click throughs? What's gonna make the most sales? Like the pitches, right? And
Mhm.
so like we're so astute enough to be able to like recognize that. So anytime like someone does that, we're just like, oh shit, like knock that off, right? Whereas like most people for some reason or another are so blind to that. So they just see someone like, okay, another conversation. We went into like
Yeah.
guru-itis, right?
Mhm.
So you have like someone that's just saying stuff that just sounds great.
Yeah.
And one of the best things I ever heard from like this group called the Flow Genome Project, which is like putting science to this sort of consciousness of
Mhm.
flow, is that sounds great, but does it grow corn?
I love that.
And it's a
Yeah.
Navajo saying supposedly
Yeah.
that they're like there's all these people that like spout out this amazing sounding shit,
Yeah.
and people like get sucked into it because it's charismatic like a
Mhm.
guru, and then they're just hypnotized by this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But in the end it's like, what is it doing in your life? Does this information translate to you becoming better, you like upgrading yourself in some skill,
Right.
or is it generating income? You know, because like I was married once and my wife was like, you know, where's where's the dough? Like, you know, it's like you're in some ways I got caught up in my own bullshit, right? It was like I was meditating constantly. I believed in the secret,
Mhm.
right? And it was just like, oh, because I had these flow states and things came easy, I just assume like that's how everything should be, right? But that's not really life. Like life is a balance, a
Yeah.
harmony of working hard, but also like surrendering. So finding that like harmony is because you see people like grinding, but they have like no flow, and they're like
Right.
they have all this material evidence or corn, but they're lacking spiritually, you know. And then you
Yeah.
have these really spiritually rich people, but they're like basically homeless or transient, you know.
Yeah. Well, and just yesterday I was like listening to like Marie Forleo, who for a class actually I was like watching some of her videos for a class I have, and something that really resonated with me that she said was like being rich doesn't, or it's like a limiting belief, you know, to that one of the limiting beliefs that people have that are unable to attain wealth is that rich people can't be spiritual, or that rich people are greedy. And I totally resonate with that because, yeah, it's easy to think that. It's easy to think like, well, how am I going to essentially like live in the belly of the beast and be true to myself? Because money is causes all these problems and issues in the world, when really I think it's better to recognize that, like, well, I had someone else tell me years ago when I was stuck in this rut. I'll tell you a little story. I was like stuck in this rut for a long time, kind of just like going back and forth between feeling I was pretty depressed and just feeling like I didn't have a purpose. You know, it was after college and it was like, what do I do? I'm just like floating and I'm not really making a difference in this world, and I don't want to have a 9 to 5, but I'm sitting here like, what do I do? You know, and one of my friends she's a psychic and a tarot reader, and she's awesome. She came over to my house, and I opened the door, and she's like, "You look like shit." She's this French woman, and I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You are resonating depression. It's disgusting." And I'm like, that sounds mean, but she's just very straightforward. And she goes, "No, you don't understand. You need to recognize that the tighter you hold your palm, the more water squeezes out. The more open your palm is, the more water you can hold. It's the same thing with money. You've lived plenty of lives in the past, trust me, where you were struggling. You were on the streets and had nothing to eat. But now it's your turn to live a life where money will be there for you. You don't have to work that hard. You're going to, because that's who you are, but you will always be provided for. Money will always be there, and now it's your turn to recognize that that's okay, and you deserve that, and that the more money you have, the more you can help people. You know, and she was like, how do you expect that if you don't allow yourself to have money because you don't think you deserve it, how are you going to help anyone or have this sense of purpose in the world? Because you'll be stuck surviving instead of thriving. And if you're thriving, you can help the survivors. And that legitimately changed my life and my perspective forever. Because I just didn't ever feel like I deserved it. It was like my heart broke every time I watched or heard about anyone who couldn't get out of being ill because they don't have clean water, or, you know, like, what am I doing? At the time, it was like I was living on Kauai and had no job and was living off saved money and was just going to the beach meditating every day. And I was like, man, I'm living like a retired person at 23 years old. Why am I doing this? This isn't fair to the world. And it was like, no, it's okay to reset. I do need to work hard now. But yeah, anyway, hearing that and like changing my perspective made a huge difference, where you're right, finding that balance between saying, I deserve this and I'm going to be in my flow state, but also I'm not going to put the responsibility off on the rest of the world to take care of me.
Right.
Because that's the thing, is you think like, well, it's going to come to me because the universe hears me. That's great, but we are also humans, so you gotta get your ass up and like make some moves. You can't literally sit there and just have money fall on your head. Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because there have been like occasions where it has happened, but I think that's just one of the things that we have to be really careful about. You know, it's just because you have one experience that's this one way doesn't necessarily mean that's like the complete picture, you know?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's learning about like neurosciences and like the, you know, cognitive biases that we have, and like the stories that we tell ourselves and rationalize when it comes to like things like what is the intuition, like what is like gut instinct, right?
Yeah.
And it's neat that science is now starting to say like we have like all this bacteria like that makes the human body on top of like tissue.
Yeah.
And they can't tell what, if it's, you know, more bacteria, or even made out of more bacteria or more like human parts, right? It's like, or they're one-to-one. It's just but the thing is, it is some sort of synergistic environment that's happening. And supposedly these signals are coming from certain bacteria. So if you have bacteria that is like sugar loving, they're gonna send signals to your brain to like eat more sugar, right? But if you have like a balanced like flora of different bacteria, like good and bad, then you're gonna be a little more balanced. Like you can actually like have better decision making when it comes to like meals, right? So all this stuff to me is like so fascinating. It's like more tools that I can have. Oh, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
I put it on silence, but the alarm is
No, it's all good. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, that's the real. That's life, but yeah, it's for me. It's like if I can learn different perspective, even a psychic's perspective, right? Like I think that everybody being human has a voice. Everybody has a way of seeing the world. It may not be the most complete picture, but they may see something that you might be missing, right? So, and then it gets into like synchronicities, right? Meaning, purpose, right? And so it's like, am I projecting meaning onto something when I see sort of like code in the matrix, right?
Yeah.
Or is that just numbers? But like, cause numbers are just symbols, and like, what are symbols? It's a meaning that we attach so that we can communicate in a language, right? It's just like this whole experience is so crazy, like how we could even talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
where you think back, like, how did someone just one day say, hello, okay, hello,
and I
okay.
understood what you
Right?
meant by that, right?
Where it's like, yeah, how does that even come to be at all?
Yeah, and you look at children that grow up learning like multiple languages.
Yeah.
It comes back to like the environment, and like I'm always fascinated about learning, but like learning in a way that's like very pragmatic and practical, not just like we were saying earlier about like just getting information, because you can get really high off of just reading books all day.
Yeah.
Right? I've done that. I've bought like a library of many different books, but in the end it was like, did it grow corn?
Yeah.
I had these like high flow states, whether it was from breathing practices, yoga, sport, emergency situation, jumping out of an airplane, like saving people's lives, out of body from a flu, sex. Like there's all these different ways, like alcohol. Cheers.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Though.
And there are all these tools that can be like misused, and really is, you see people just getting together and just like getting high.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but it's fun to party, but what are you actually doing with that? Like, I get like if you're escaping the 9 to 5 and the rat race, and you just need to like totally check out, decompress, like I totally get that. But then you become an addict, you know, because it's easier to like not feel the pain, right?
Yeah.
And it's sad when I see in my travels in our country, like how great this country is, and like how awesome like immigrant mentality is when they came from a place where they didn't have these freedoms. They come here and they're like, holy shit, I'm fucking free.
Yeah.
And they like kick ass, and other people get mad at them. And you're like, well, you got the same opportunities. And yeah, you can blame the system. Yeah, you can blame like you had a bad experience. Like maybe you got raped. Maybe you got fired from a job or something happened. But it just, when I travel and I see like people in Skid Row, in like the most abundant country on this planet, right? And it's like, yeah, we need to have war because there's people that want to kill us.
Yeah.
Like that sucks, but we need to protect ourselves. But like, how much money do we have to put into it though, right? Can we have like a selected group go over and get the job done?
Right.
Or do you just need to build this huge infrastructure because it's a huge business? You know?
It's tough watching people do that, exactly. And it's tough to like watch people play the blame game. And yeah, I'm like said something in a recent like Instagram post, just like stop caring about your haters, because like they'll step aside when you walk through, and you won't even notice them. And it's true, all these people are like, oh, fuck the haters. And I'm like, you're still focusing on them. Yeah. Don't you know that? Like, you've posted something about them 10 times in the last year, so like just maybe let it go. But yeah, and at the same time, with the blame game and everything, and how you said like, yeah, something may have happened to you, but you have the choice. Like, I can't tell you how many people I've met that are like, you don't understand. I'll always be like this. Like, I've just been through too much. I've seen too much shit, and I'm never gonna be the same. And it's like, do you want me to list all of the things that have happened in my life that were considered tragedies or trauma? I'm fine. Like, and I'm not saying that anyone's tragedies are comparable to another person's, because that I'm a huge believer of. We all have our own trauma, and that can never be compared to someone else's. However, what can be compared is the way that you deal with it and the way that you turn it into light or dark. Like, that's your choice to let something rule your life. No one ever has that power over you. And that's another thing I learned from my parents. They always said, don't ever use the phrase that someone made you do something or they're making you do something. No one can make you do a damn thing unless they're holding a gun to your head and you make the choice to follow their instructions instead of possibly getting shot. You know, they're like, or whatever. Like, that's really the only time someone can make you do something. So the rest is your choice. And you decide whether you want to wake up and have a good day and turn those traumas into lessons and make the most of it.
Yeah, it's pretty neat because we deal with healing.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the things that you finally say that I'm not a victim. Like, yeah, there's certain environments that are definitely hard. Like, certain people are born in certain really harsh environments.
Yeah.
And I've never had that, so I can't compare. But at the same time, there's so many stories of people that have gotten out of it, you know?
Right.
Because they just realize, like, if I keep down this path, I will end up dead.
Yeah.
Or like everybody else. So I might as well just take a risk, you know, take the chance.
Yeah.
Go for it. And that's the amazing thing is, which like is really crazy about like the life that we live in, at least from my experience with medicines.
Yeah.
It's crazy because you start to realize like maybe we are in some kind of matrix, some sort of simulation, and it's just too many. I wouldn't say like coincidences. Like, how is it that like I have a thought and like of a person, or even like I took a nap and I dreamt of them, and then I woke up to the phone ringing, and then I picked it up and it was that person.
Yeah.
I was like how do you explain that? So there are some phenomenons that are going on that are like that, where there's very synchronistic, where you decide, kind of like The Secret, like you can see like sort of the ideal like optimal life. You can see it in your mind. So if it's in your mind, it's real somehow with neurons and chemistry, if you're gonna talk like science, you know.
Right.
So how does anything ever get invented? It was an idea. Where did the idea come from? No one knows, right? But someone basically said, okay, I have this idea, I'm gonna like tinker around in their little like tool shop and then come out with something that enables us to do this, right?
Yeah.
So everybody has that opportunity in this country, at least like the Western world, even like third world, like they can find a way. I think because once you like commit, it's weird how things just sort of manufacture itself around you for it to happen, and that's been my experience. Like every time I went for it, it was like the yellow brick road. It just kept going with the resources, being resourceful, you know, and it all just came together. And there's so many examples of people that are actually like doing that throughout history.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of like, okay, anybody that's listening to this, like you can do that, especially in this country.
Yeah, you can make it happen. And I'm a huge like believer that in frequency and vibration. I mean, I always have believed that like everything in existence is made up of vibrations. And when you set yourself to a frequency of manifestation and construction, I guess, of things that you want to build and you desire to have in your life, that frequency is the one you're gonna ride, and you can ride it for an infinite amount of time. The only thing that can stop you from continuing on that frequency is yourself. Your fears, are the only thing that can like buck you off, so to speak. And yeah, it's true. I have experienced that a lot, where I said, no, I'm gonna do this. I don't know how, but I'm gonna do it. And sure enough, all these doors open immediately and let it happen. And I'm actually currently experiencing that with a bunch of stuff, where it's like, whoa, okay, I just went back to my space of, I want to be done with the worry that things aren't going to happen the way I want them to, and I'm going to come back to my space of, this is going to happen for me because I work damn hard and I deserve it, and this is who I am. And once I get back to that frequency, it's insane how much opportunity is right at my doorstep. And I can take
work hard doing it too, because every sort of problem that you have there's a solution. And so many people quit 3 feet from goal. They're so close to this aha eureka moment, where all of a sudden the world opens up in this flow, and you notice things that were in front of your nose the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. I think, for example, our words, people are listening to our words, and it sounds great. And even research, it's who do you believe? Do you do a high fat diet or a low fat diet? It's
right.
There's research expounding the benefits of both. And so the only way to really know is to quantify it somehow and do the experiment, run the experiment on yourself. So if you want to live a certain life, and you're stuck at a dead end job or a 9 to 5, it's find a hobby, something that you really like to do on your free time, rather than partying and getting fucked up, and then try to see share that with somebody and see what happens. You know? And it's so cool, because we've had similar experiences where the world opened up, because we had fear, it scared the shit out of us, at least for me.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Yeah, and it was just or it was how do I do this? I'm a little frustrated, and I'm but I'll take a nap or go for a walk, meditate, and then all of a sudden the insight comes in. It's oh shit, I need to call that person, or I need to take that trip, even though I don't have that much money in my bank account.
Yeah.
It is the hero's journey, that sense, and it's just been time and time again, a Super Mario Brother video game or something.
Yeah.
It was you reached that right, and you have all your little tools, and you have your health line.
Yeah.
But back to frequency and vibration, I know a lot of people listening would be oh my god, she just went there, right? But for me, it's when I heard, because I work with electronic device, right, electricity, and it's people, come on, do you not realize that there's a heart rate monitor in the hospital? That you can get a meter on your chest, and it measures your heart rate, and even deeper, the quality of each beat, and it's all electrical. What is that? That is a frequency, a waveform.
Yeah.
And it's also a vibration. So the brain is the same thing. There's a brain wave, there's a heart wave, and there's muscle wave.
Yeah.
And the way I describe it is a cell phone. It's a cell phone is sending signals out to the ether. Yeah. And another cell phone's picking it up through the cell tower to another cell phone. And it's and it's electrical, and it's sending signals, and there's a strength of the signal. So you have no bars, 5 bar, and then you have the battery, which is percentage, 0%, 100%. So what if you're a cell? You are a cell phone. You're a cellular being. It has electricity. It's sending
really
brain waves, heart waves, muscle waves. And in flow, I find, I'd like to hear a scientist confirm this, but when is it the moment where you have that sort of static, where your monkey mind's going off, your heart rate is beating fast, and you're tense in your muscles. And then it flips into, now you're like this perfect fluid muscle. Your heart is like calm, and you're breathing, and your brainwave monkey mind totally shuts off, and you're like, holy fuck, I feel like me again.
Yeah, when does that occur? Like,
when is that moment?
Yeah.
That's the flow moment, and when does it like harmonize? And so the frequency and vibration again is when you're in harmony, all of a sudden you can see the world clear. But if you're stressed out in fight or flight or freeze or fuck, you're a little bit like confused, conflicted, right? It's like what's the difference between like fucking and lovemaking, you know?
Yeah.
And there's like a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
Or just having sex, right? So it's all these human experiences that we are able to have in this life.
Yeah.
I'm just going off a
no,
like
go.
rant, but,
I love it.
But it's like now you have many experiences, and that's the beauty of like getting older. Like I hit 40 a few months ago, right?
Nice.
And it's just like, holy shit, like I have this whole backdrop of life that I can compare with wisdom any situation that comes in now versus a child that's just beginning. They don't have like the foundation, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they do have more of like a clearer version of the world, even though it's a little more like Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know, and they're very like naive and impressionable, but that's why they learn so quickly. But they also pick up programming from other people, right? So they don't have the ability to like what's the word?
Like discern.
Discern, right? So that's comes with age and experience.
Yeah.
And you don't get that just reading a book. Like it helps get other people's experience wisdom. I like hanging out with older people.
Yeah.
It's like, why the fuck would I want to like make the same mistakes? You know, I mean, listen to their stories. You know. So,
yeah, I loved the podcast you did with your friend.
Like Vinny.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Italian guy. That
Vinny
was awesome.
Cucalicchio.
Yes, Cucalicchio.
Yeah, the odd fella.
He had great stories. I digged it for sure. I was like, yes, I digged it. I dug it. Whatever.
Yeah. Hey, see, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, well, I feel like being on that frequency is really important for success, personal success, and also like, yeah, it can get hippy-dippy in some ways where people are like, you're just vibrationally off right now, you know, but at the same
your
time,
tarot
like,
cards say
I mean, like, and I joke about that stuff all the time with, you know, where it's like, you guys, we just all need to sit and like have a few breaths together and like get back on the same vibration because something is off. But at the same time, it's true. I mean, I live with my boyfriend, my partner, my love, and like we constantly are like, you know, just look at each other because one of us says something or answers a question before the other person asks, and it's like, come on, like, do we even have our own thoughts anymore? Like, we completely read each other's minds. And that, to me, it's like clear that it's a literal like sharing of a brainwave. You know, you're sharing a vibration, and maybe not even just on a brain level, but like we share our heart waves, and so there's a lot of
sharing
things
like
that,
now like bacteria, right?
Right,
like,
yeah.
Bacteria give us signals. It's
Yeah.
wild.
It's like everything has to just be, like vibrationally related, and I don't know how it couldn't be.
Well, one of the best things I heard was like a distinctive word. It was like, I think the person said, like almost like info packets or data. So everything has like a data to it, whether it's like a electrical signal or like a bacteria somehow communicating, or like just signals coming in from like me like looking at you, looking into your eyes. So there's all this like data coming in, and it's just like what can we do with it, right? And it's just like, how do we know what we know? Like, how do we know, like when we don't know? There's so many things going on that are very mysterious, but
Right.
it is weird that somehow we can't finish each other's sentences, or you and your boyfriend, like there's these like group flow moments that happen when like a tribe gets together, or let's say a military operational like bunch of Navy SEALs go in and they have like nonverbal communication for a mission. Like no one can speak, but they can like see each other's eye, make like hand gestures. So it's like something's going on where like the greatest teams or the best sort of communities are able to like feed energetically off each other,
Yeah.
and move like a hive mind, but still maintain their individuality, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to become a cult, and you
Yeah.
also don't want to be like completely like isolated from the world, you know, like dogmatic, right?
Right.
Like there's this middle fertile ground that's amazing that happens.
Yeah, and when you get in those spaces, you're like, oh, that was so cool. My mom told me her and her best friend, Holly, who I'm named after, her childhood best friend, when they were kids, they used to play this game on a regular basis where they would kind of like sit with each other and do a little like, okay, like just, I don't know, try to connect. And then one of them would go take whatever object and go hide it somewhere. And they would try to, on one attempt, see in their mind's eye where it was and find it. And she was like, almost every time we went exactly to where it was and found it. But, you know, I mean, in the, like, the 60s, when that was, like, there were kids and they didn't have the hippies 60s parents. They were in, like, born-again Christian, like, very strict and closed-minded families. So, anyway, I guess it was just interesting that, you know, even being in, like, a closed-minded type family relationship, they still took the time to go like connect with each other and do this really cool activity. And I just find it so cool that people can like stretch out from what they were nurtured and like with, and they can use their nature to vibrate higher. Yeah, I just find that so cool. And on top of that, I mean, how many times have you, like you said, thought of a friend and then they call you?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I mean, even more intense than that. There is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's there's so many again phenomenons that again like with science, like the just as we evolve as human beings, like we're able to like see things that are sort of like dismissing myths, because like the people, the sort of naive people of the past in some ways like didn't have like the technology or the education or the tools, you know. It was like each stage led to another stage in the generations to come, you know. And like to this day there's people that still believe like the earth is flat, and it might be true because like I have not, other than being in an airplane and seeing like a curvature,
right,
or being on like a mountain or something, like I've never seen for myself, so I could like almost understand their point of view. Like I'm totally like empathetic to it.
Yeah.
But at the same time I'm like, hold on a sec, like we have science, and I guess like they're questioning everything. That's awesome. But they can't confirm it though. Like they're not running experiments and saying like,
right. Well, and I'm not gonna lie. The only people that have told me that they truly believe the Earth is flat are also people who are completely engulfed by conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
To the point of it being unhealthy, where they don't believe anything they're told. I mean, I had one guy who tried to convince me the Earth was flat. In the same conversation, tried to tell me that it got so intense, like way more intense than like what we were talking about. But instead of us like just being in a matrix, he went into like, you know, that we are all born like in a lab and our social security numbers are actually like our matrix ID, and then, but it wasn't like a metaphor for it. He truly felt like we were just all these like cogs in a machine, and then you know, he was like, all the A-list superstars eat babies, and I was trying to joke with him and was like, not Jennifer Aniston though, right? I love her. And he was like, he seriously looked me dead in the eye and went, she's the biggest baby eater of them all. And I laughed because I thought he was joking. He's like, it's not funny. You think that Jennifer Aniston is eating babies is funny? I was like, oh my God, okay, I gotta go. And like, those are all the type of people that like, where I'm like, look, I have some crazy ideas too, and I don't want to be called crazy, so I'm not going to call you crazy. However, there has to be like some balance, right? Like, if you think the entire world is against you all the time, you're not getting anywhere positive.
Yeah, I've definitely been down the conspiracy rabbit hole with like 9/11, and
yeah,
you know,
and
you see
some
like
that are kind of obvious,
like JFK, but even like the monetary system and the Federal Reserve, and like how like the gold standard was like voted, and all these different things. But in the end, it's like you can like have that rule your life and be like paranoid,
right?
Or like you said, like being in the belly of the beast and making like the best of it.
Yeah.
Like given the freedom that we have.
Yeah.
And it's like I look forward to the time I can go to outer space and actually see it for myself.
Yeah.
Like this beautiful planet, you know? And but at the same time, like with you, the difference between you and I is that we can be like questioned by other people, and have a real like open discourse, conversation, discussion, even a debate.
Right.
And those other people can't. They're totally stuck in their viewpoint.
Yeah.
And they'll always come back to like, well, like where's the source of that information? Like we'll say that to them, but they can't back it up with like science, which they'll say is also a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
So there's no ever like reaching them unless some of them somehow like realize like, okay. So again, like the point is, I realized that there's so much stuff even with science. It really comes down to like, how can I apply this information in my life?
Yes.
Let me experiment. Does it actually yield the result that the research says? Does it grow corn?
Right. And does it serve me to become obsessed with it? Because that's the, you know, and I get a little intense about things where, you know, I'm like, but this whole like corporation is just like completely taking over, you know, whatever, like big agriculture, and all of the crops are being taken over by GMOs, and like nobody knows how bad all the things in there are. Like I'll get a little intense with people, and I have to come back and laugh with myself and think, like, first of all, Holly, does it serve you to be preaching to these people who are eating corn chips that what they're eating is poisonous? No. Let the poor people eat their chips. Like, come on, you know, like, get over it. So, yeah, and I think, like, that's the thing is, it's like, does it serve me to be paranoid about not knowing the truth about everything? Because we will never know. So it's okay to have your beliefs, and it's important to have your beliefs, and important to have these things that you stand your ground on, you know? Like, it's definitely a good thing to say, hey, I don't appreciate that the government is taking this action against me and our people, and we're just sitting here idle. However, you have to pick your battles. And, yeah, you have to recognize if it serves you and your community to be so obsessed or, like, so into it.
Yes. Like, there is a fine line, obviously, you know, like, between sharing information and proselytizing and preaching, and
going back to the guru-itis.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's you can't help it if you've had an experience where you did get a result from a particular method or technique that you tried, and you know, people will ask questions, and that's usually like when I will like share it with them. But at the same time, like, that's what worked for me. You need to try it for yourself. And like any great teacher will say that, like, they'll share their experience and say that's what works for me, but you need to find out for yourself.
Exactly.
Because you are like N=1, you are an individual. Research is based on a certain sample size, and
Yeah.
a lot of times it's not like how the environment works. Like in research, when they have like genetically altered mice and they're in like under fluorescent light, right? They're fed a certain diet. They're whatever the research is, like that's not like everyday life.
Right.
And there's a difference between like a rat and a human, right?
Yeah.
So like you can deduce things, you can even try to get as close to a human, like maybe a primate or something, but most of the things are in isolation in a certain environment that's not the environment that most of us live in. So the research might say that, but that's in that specific environment.
Right.
And not be like relevant to like us, you know.
Yeah, in fact, just today I was hearing that on the radio that some California, I don't know, some elected government official, I don't know who, if they were in like what branch, I'm not even going to try to remember, but they were the deciding vote today that pretty soon here California is going to have to start putting a cancer warning label on coffee products. And because some scientists came and said like, oh, there's this chemical, and I can't remember what it was, in coffee that's are carcinogen, and the defense tried to say, like, well, okay, yes, it is present, but it's present in all coffee from the roasting process, and the levels are so incredibly low, they don't actually contribute to people developing cancer. Like it's kind of out of the question that it could cause cancer even, but they had no proof to back up that the levels were low enough, and so they ended up passing it. So now, but it's that same kind of thing where you have to like pick your battles, pick what is going to really bother you, and then question. I mean, really, like we've all been coffee has tons of antioxidants. Coffee is wonderful, and yes, if it's done like most foods now, it's grown with tons of pesticides, and there's a lot that could be bad with it, but I guess, yeah, my point is that anything can be bad if you really, really dig deep enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you can basically live out of like a plastic bubble.
Right, exactly. Like, are we going to live here and just be human and experience? Or are we just going to say like, well, everything around us is dangerous. No, don't touch it. Like,
yeah, I've only eat organic.
Yeah, like, don't drink it, don't eat it.
Yeah, it's like, well, then I need to stay in my climate controlled, air conditioned, filtered everything like bubble and never go out in the world. And I mean, shit, it sucks that like our air is definitely disgusting in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
And there's all this emissions and pollutants, and I think that we need to get better at like protecting the environment. Obviously there's like volcanoes releasing stuff, and there's natural like emissions as well, but it just sucks that like you have to walk down the street and see litter, or like swim in like a tropical place like Hawaii and see plastic, and it's like that's lame.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, humans, like let's just put this shit back in the right places. But I feel bad when I get like a plastic straw and like a plastic container, and I get coffee, like iced coffee or something, and just like I'm like, where the hell am I supposed to put this plastic thing? And there's no recycling around.
Yeah. And
so I just throw it in the trash and I go about my day. So it's like I'm a hypocrite, right? Because I want to see like the planet being like cleaner, the air being cleaner, everything cleaner, but like what do I do with this stuff, right? Like packaging and
well, and that's where I guess like it comes in that you have to like take responsibility to the level that you want to, like whether it be bringing your own cup or those type of things, but also not being super hard on yourself when you do have to do those things, or you choose to do those things. It's like same for me, that I have been getting better about being less obsessive with food. Like I was very obsessive with like not wanting to eat any food that had like, you know, been touched by pesticides or chemicals, or was packaged
or factory farmed, or
yeah, and I still feel that way, but I'm actually getting a lot less intense about it, even though I have a lot more knowledge now. And I think that's because I just know that my mind, like, I'm gonna go cliche for a second, like mind over matter. But like if I eat something, if I'm out with friends and I go to a restaurant, I mean, it used to seriously give me anxiety because I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't want to put this stuff in my body. Like, what am I going to do? This is freaking me out. But in reality, like, me being surrounded by good friends and we're laughing and enjoying each other and sharing those positive vibrations, that's actually going to be what I'm ingesting more than those pesticide-fueled foods. And so it makes a bigger difference to just be happy and not be anxious while I'm eating, rather than to be anxious about what I'm eating, feel guilty, and then still put it in my body because I don't want to be judged by anyone. Like, so creating that, making the choice.
It's amazing like how much power we have. Science again is confirming like biology of belief and
exactly
the connection between like psychology and physiology. Like if you spend a majority of your time in like fight or flight, freeze and fuck, like you're gonna like break down the system quicker versus like having that harmony where you're in like parasympathetic mode versus like predominantly sympathetic mode, which is fight or flight. Like you can have the choice of how you're gonna frame a situation, you know, even though it's not like optimal, but you can like adapt to it. Like this is what I learned from like Dr. Andy Galpin as well. It's like you can't do you can't adapt or optimize at the same time. You're doing one or the other. And the example is like, again, you're at a function with your friends and it's not the optimal food situation, or but you decide like, hey, I'm gonna really enjoy this moment and not get all stressed out or worried and get into like fight or flight where you're releasing adrenaline and cortisol. You're gonna shift your physiology where you're just gonna be accepting of the situation, and now the opposite, like sort of life inducing hormones and neurotransmitters are released, and you're like your cells are bathing in like bliss.
Right, and you digest your food completely differently.
Totally.
Yeah, it's the same, you know, it's like if you cook while you're mad, like that's a huge rule. Do not cook when you're mad. Or, you know, and certainly don't eat it afterwards or feed it to anyone, because you're putting that force into that food and you're going to digest it that way. You're not going to feel good after eating it. So it makes a big difference to have that conscious awareness, like, well, conscious eating. It's a huge thing I like to focus on.
It's again another phenomenon that we can't like prove, but there's something about eating like mama's chicken soup and like fresh baked cookies.
Right.
Like even if she made it with like canola oil or like some sort of like synthetic vanilla or something for the cookie, or like when you eat it, it's so made with love, like it like cancels out whatever like toxin or whatever.
Yeah, it makes you feel good.
Yeah, right. So it's one of those things that maybe supports those people that do drink like 10 gallons of coffee, soda, drink alcohol, smoke every day, don't exercise, get a little rest, but they're just like pumped every day.
Yeah, and they live to be healthy well into old age, and you're like, God, what did they do? I don't understand. It's like, well, they probably had a completely different outlook on life.
And then you have a health nut, right?
Yeah.
That's like totally like freaked out about everything. And they croak at like 45, you know?
Yeah, and like I noticed too that those times when I am extremely paranoid about food, and I mean I'm always really healthy, but there's a difference, like I said, between being healthy and being paranoid. And when I'm in those paranoid states of feeling like I can't possibly eat healthy enough and all my money is going toward, this and that and making sure it's all the best and I don't want to eat out and blah, 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 I actually gain weight. I do, and it's because I'm stressed and my cortisol levels are off because I'm freaked out. And I'm like, I don't sleep as well. And the second I just let go, I always look physically better and feel physically better. And like emotionally, I'm just more clear. Like everything is better when I'm not paranoid.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And that's where I would love to see like science show like what's the electrical output of people's cells when they're stressed versus when they're like totally like optimized and like in flow, and like actually have like some sort of instrument that can read like the emission of light like coming off the system.
Let's figure it out.
That's why I know some really smart people in like Stanford
let's make it happen.
A bunch of like scientists. So but yeah,
let's call like Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton. Let's get the doctors in on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the people I know are like in that world of like Stanford per se, and like those institutions that have the resources to like measure these kind of things. Because like again, like I've had these experiences, but I can't like confirm it.
Yeah.
I can only like share with people, and they either say I'm like bullshitting them or not. And it does sound like a little bit far-fetched, a lot of the things that we're talking about. I would beg to differ is that we're willing, again, to be open to like questioning,
right?
And like to have a discussion and say, okay, like you experience it, not like go in and say like, hey, this is my truth and you have your truth, and we can't like come to like some sort of mutual like respect.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We gotta. Especially because, like you said, no one else is going to ever experience what we experience on our own. So no one really ever knows if the other person is being truthful or not. Like, I mean, in reality, everything we say we experienced on our own could be a complete lie. But the point isn't if it's a lie or truth. It's our truth. And, like, it's cool to talk about regardless. So it's good to, like, kind of take other people's stories in and imagine them as your own and think like, wow, what if that happened to me?
Yeah, it's really cool to get into like other people's shoes. Another like native saying like walk a mile in another person's shoe, and you would understand like, of course they're reacting that way, to whatever sort of stimulation is brought into their life. Like we always have this thing where like we don't understand why people are like operating the way they do. For example, in traffic or something, right? It's like, why would somebody do that?
Yeah.
But then like we act like we don't do that ourselves, So
I think about that a lot in traffic. I'm like, oh, you dick, or what, someone cuts me off, and then I'm thinking like, well, if I were in that lane when that happened and that car did that, whatever, I probably would have cut me off too. Like, I do think about that a lot. Yeah. And then, so usually the curse words come out, and then I'm like, man, I'm sorry, it's okay.
Right. Or it's like someone actually deserves to be, like, told off. Like, they really were, like, an idiot, right? And it's like they knew they were actually doing, because some people argue they didn't know that they were dumb. Like, some people know, and they do it anyways, right?
Oh, yeah. Or they're just pissed off at something else, and then they're like, well, I'll never see this person again, and I doubt they'll actually hit me, so I'm just going to cut them off. Just because I want to.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Holly. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long but awesome conversation.
Yeah, it's really cool. Anything that you have, like, closing thoughts on what you want to share? Like, I know you're going to school. You've done retreats. So your main focus is like finishing school.
Yeah, I'll be done in June. So
Okay.
I'll have my Holistic Wellness Practitioner degree.
Okay.
And so that includes like having a certification as a behavioral change specialist and a fitness and nutrition specialist. And then I just have all kinds of knowledge to share about wellness and health in general. And my main focus is treating everyone as the unique individuals that they are.
Yeah.
And not doing this whole standardized bullshit of like, well, go to the MyPlate diet or like the MyPlate recommendations from the FDA. You know, it's like I'm all about making sure that everyone is tended to the way they need to be tended to, and knowing that they're special in the best way. So yeah, I'm really stoked on it, and I'm really stoked to like be meeting more people that are in this field and are real people. And as we talked about before, they're not just like gung-ho kind of overly eccentric folks that you can't even really have a grounded conversation with because they're just so far gone.
Right.
Yeah, so I just feel really grateful to you for letting me chat with you again, and I'm really excited to work together in the future and to hopefully get in on these flow state retreats. And I'm really excited for July. And yeah, I feel really grateful, so thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for coming on this show. And how can people like reach you or find out like your website or social media? Or
Yeah, so my website is hollywhitehealth.com. So that's pretty easy. Holly White Health, and Holly is just spelled Holly. So pretty easy there. And then my Instagram is currently Yoga Girl Arizona. However, I am going to be changing that to Holly White Health as well. So if one doesn't come up, then try the other one. Yeah. So those are my two biggest kind of platforms that I use is Instagram and my website. I have a Facebook as well. That's Synergy Solutionist LLC. And that one I'm probably going to be backing away from more just because Facebook doesn't seem to do a lot for me. So if you want to find me, it's best to go to Instagram or my website. Yeah. And then my email too is a good one, which is synergysolutionist@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, you have a lot to offer in the world. You're super young. You're really wise. You're old soul. And just honor again that you took the time to have a show here at F-Bomb.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for coming on the show, Holly.
Thank you. Let's drop an F-bomb.
Boom. Phew.